Yeah. All right. Yeah, no problem. Yeah, not a problem at all. And thank you for asking me to come and do this. I oh my gosh, I think it was like last year we had tried to do something, and for whatever reason, I don't even remember what it was. Couldn't make it happen and stuff, but it sounds like you've got a great operation going. So I'm really happy to be a speaker and be a part of this. Because to be frank, I think there's been a pandemic going on with the human race long before COVID started, and that pandemic is people forgetting that we are built to move. Um, it's a simple fact, and it's one that a lot of people have lost sight of in today's environment, I think. So I'm really happy to be here speaking on this. Um, a bit of my background. I am a clinical exercise physiologist. I went to Slippery Rock University. Not sure if everybody here is Western PA or not, but I was not born and raised Western PA, but I now consider myself a Yinzer by blood. um, and I'm a proud Yinzer, even though I can't name a single Steeler right now, now that Ben Roethlisberger's done. So I'm working on it. But anyway, so I went to Slippery Rock University for exercise science. I did not want to do physical therapy school, so I am not a physical therapist, and I won't claim to be, even though all of my patients call me their physical therapist. Um, so what I do for my full-time day job is I am the regional director of the exercise oncology locations for an organization called Maple Tree Cancer Alliance. We're a nonprofit organization, and right now I run the locations that we are in partnership with in Pennsylvania. So those two locations for now are, are the UPMC Home and Cancer Center on Wilmington Road in Newcastle, Pennsylvania. Oh man, excuse me again. I'm sorry. Um, and the other one is a recreation center in Sharon, Pennsylvania, named the Buell Community Recreational Center. So those are the two locations that we have going in Pennsylvania that I oversee. And then my staff, whether they're intern staff or full-time staff, will do the kind of the hands-on, the meat and potatoes, the fun stuff, the people-to-people type stuff that is a unique service that we can provide. So that's kind of what my day job is. In my other background, I am a licensed massage therapist, like I joked about a little bit earlier here. I'm a licensed massage therapist, a corrective exercise specialist, and by my own interests, I'm a power lifter and outdoorsman, and I like experimenting with all things movement and fitness type stuff. Um, I am very block shaped, but I have tried yoga. I did try it, and that's as far as I'm going with that. So that's a little bit of my background, I guess, and a little bit about who I am. Really, in terms of, I guess, to finalize introducing myself here, kind of my why. Is even before picking my major in college, I didn't really know what I wanted to do for the long term. I just knew that I wanted to use my strengths for the community around me, and I felt that God was calling me to pursue that rather than one specific field. And so my strengths at the time, as it related to my professional degree, to me, I felt was best in exercise science. So that's why I pursued that. And as of right now, outside of my job, I am pursuing other business endeavors, such as my own massage therapy business, my own health and wellness business and stuff, and a leadership and development organization as well. So I am doing my best to practice what I preach and stuff. But hey, we're all not perfect. But yeah, so that's a little bit of my background, a little bit about who I am, I guess. And yeah, I'm really excited and really thankful to be here speaking to everybody. So I guess I want to start off. I guess if you're not comfortable having your face pop up in the recording, feel free to not participate here. But um, anybody moved today? Like outside of your house? Outside of, well, I guess it was a little rainy today in Western PA, but maybe outside of like daily house chores. Anybody moved today? Mary's iPad, you got your hand up. At a
I
girl.
did.
Work. What's that? I'm sorry. Oh, Jen walked. All right. All right. There we go. Yeah. So really my point with asking that is, why are we asking that about today? Why isn't it just a given? I think that when it comes to a lot of chronic illnesses, people would be very amazed what exercise and what movement can do for them. So a couple of examples that I can give in relation to that. All of you now know my background. I do exercise oncology for my day job, and I'm teaching people how to train patients through hula hooping. You will have to teach me one day.
Wow.
Because I've never been able to do it, not even on my arms. No rhythm. um, but yeah, why do we ask who got movement today? You know, why isn't it just not a question? I think like I was getting to there. Oh, bike and PT. All right, there you go. Well, you're beating me. I haven't done cardio in a couple minutes. But anyway, what as it relates to chronic illnesses, what a lot of people don't realize is like today's environment is really centered around like catering to people's comfort. And the human body is a phenomenal machine. It is the by far and large, it is the most adaptable piece of tissue on the planet by far. There's nothing that matches what the human body can endure, but also what the human body can adapt to. Something as an example that I want to give to that. So anybody here feel like they could stand up right now and run 60 miles? I personally would not. If somebody told me to do that, I would probably fisticuffs them and be like, hey, you try and make me, pal. So my point with asking that is an example that I can give here in relation to the body adapting to simple movement that has a compounding effect over time to really incredible adaptations. Anybody maybe raise your hand on the Zoom call? Anybody ever hear of the Tarahumara Indians at all? They're in Mexico. They were kind of persecuted by the Mexican government and stuff. Okay, so part of their story and part of kind of what they're I don't really know if you would call it a claim to fame type of thing, but part of what they're very, very well known for is they actually have no weapons, but they eat a carnivorous diet aside from like some, I think they have a couple fermented corn drinks or something like that that turn into like a carbohydrate based drink or something. Aside from some stuff like that and some berries and some roots and stuff, they have a largely carnivorous diet. But it's like, well, how do you have a largely carnivorous diet if you have no weapons, like no knives, no whatever? What they ended up doing is as they were persecuted and pushed up into the mountains of Mexico and into kind of the more desolate areas of Mexico, what they kind of started doing is they just started chasing food. So that an example of that, I know this is kind of an off the wall example, but an example of that would be like a deer, or like a small antelope or something. So how they actually do it is pretty incredible, and tying it into how the human body is so adapted. They don't have shoes, and they also will go on these long runs in groups. So these groups of people will run after an animal and not let it stop and catch its breath until it falls over of heat stroke. Sounds savage, I know, but if you think about that, the only reason that humans are able to do that is because we sweat. So we can cool off as we're running. We can cool off as we're vacuuming around the house to get ready for guests to come over in 10 minutes when we're running late. Because we can do that, we don't need to pant, whereas animals do. And what I'm saying with all this is those people in their tribe, when they're chasing down an animal, it's not at all uncommon for them to run 20 to 60 miles one way, pick up the animal, throw it on their shoulders, and run back in the same day. Now, why is it so out of the norm for somebody like us to do that? And for them, that's Tuesday morning. So I think there's something to be said there, perspective wise, on what movement really is. And movement itself, whether you're tracking it in minutes of walking, or whether you are a CrossFit like junkie, and if you don't get your WOD in for the day, you're going to go nuts. Or you're a power lifter like me, and doing a 10-minute walk on the treadmill is good aerobic exercise for me, aside from my barbell stuff. So movement is what we were all meant to do. It's only actually a recent thing in human history for people to not be moving all day. Like, it's only a very recent thing. I mean, think about the industrial age, like the industrial boom. Mid 1900s, people were working. Like, I consider what I do with massage to be very physical, but I'm not doing 16 hours a day lifting heavy objects on barely any food, or like barely any breaks, barely any water, and lifting steel and hammering and stuff like that. I'm maybe doing 2 to 3 hours of massage a day outside of my weightlifting schedule and outside of my my day job. And I consider that a pretty strenuous activity. Aside from something like that, though, how many of us have had desk jobs and noticed changes? Like, you're at a desk job for 6 months, your back starts hurting. You're at a desk job for 2 months, and you're like, man, I think I'm getting like some swollen ankles or something. Like, man, why are my feet so stiff? You find yourself going like this with your foot like all day. So stuff like this is really a new concept, that like humans aren't moving. Humans aren't just exercising in our daily routine. A lot of that, I think, is due to, the built environment, everything around us being concrete, everything around us meant to be as ergonomic as possible, and things of that sort. And while of course it has its strengths, I think it's also really important that, as people with 2 arms, 2 legs, and a highly metabolically adaptive engine that is our bodies and our minds, don't lose sight of what we are. And what we are is, we are meant to move. We are meant to truck it. We are meant to get those wheels spinning and go. And we're meant to think through and problem solve. And a lot of people lose sight of that. So a common obstacle that I'll face, say in my day job of exercise oncology, is like, people will it's I'm not saying this as if it's not understandable. I'm saying this as in like, well, why weren't you doing this already, type of thing. Usually for us, at least at my locations that I oversee, I do all of the initial patient assessments. So when a patient is newly referred to us and they're just now starting off on our exercise program, I'm the first face that they meet in person. I'll do the assessment on the patient, explain the patient's goals, at least as far as we're concerned, and then ask them if there's anything that sounds like we should change with that, things of that sort. And And I'll get to know the patient, do their fitness assessment, do their overall health assessment. And then for their subsequent training, I'll pass them off to one of our instructors, and our instructors will handle them week to week with where they're at in treatments and whatnot. But usually, let's say somebody's first diagnosed, um, it's a pretty scary thing. Like, I don't know if everybody on here is a cancer survivor or not, but as people who have been through a cancer treatment bout, like, it's a pretty scary thing. They sit you down for that first teaching session on these four chemotherapies are the drugs that we're going to be administering to you, whether it's through a port or IV or whatever. And oh, by the way, here's a couple of hundred side effects that could hit you at random. And it'll probably hit you in the first 72 hours, maybe, or you might be fine. Or 20 years down the line, you might face something as a result of this stuff. Like, that's a pretty scary thing for somebody to be sitting there and newly diagnosed and then told that, hey, in order to cure you or in order to manage this, this is the potential negative things that could happen. So the commonality that I see a lot is when I get a new patient, that patient is like, why in the world am I going to exercise right now? Like, why would I start doing this right now? Like, they just told me I could potentially have a heart attack from this stuff, or they just told me I'm at risk for like a big blood clot or something like that. Why would I start to exercise? And that's where it definitely is an understandable concern, because it's like, yeah, why strain yourself if you're going to be feeling sick? I get it. I get it. However, if you think of just a simple scale here, I actually did have like one of those teeter-totter scales at my apartment, and I meant to use it. So again, I apologize that I ran over with my other appointments today. But if you think of it as a simple scale where you're adding little pebbles to each side, if you think of something like a treatment, like a cancer treatment, yeah, it might be curing your cancer, but in terms of your overall conditioning, it's probably going to knock you down pretty far. So what can you do to keep yourself at least about even keel with your current conditioning, even keel with your current health status, or at least in a point where those side effects are manageable? What you can do is movement. Movement and exercise can be the same thing, but they are not always the same thing. For me, what I would consider movement would be if I'm going to go fishing and I'm going to go walk down a creek for a mile or something and not catch a fish the whole time because I'm still learning. But if I'm going to be walking down that creek for like a mile, that's a lot of movement for me. Whereas for me, what I would consider exercise for myself would be, hey, load up that barbell and let's go to town with some squats. So I hope that kind of at least gives an example of the difference there, but they can be the same thing. And with that, there's a lot of times where I'm more so explaining to patients like, well, no, in order to classify as not sedentary, this is what you need to be doing. 30 minutes, 3 times a week of moderate intensity, which could feel like you just notice yourself breathing a little bit harder. 30 minutes, 3 times a week of moderate intensity aerobic exercise. Again, you're just noticing yourself breathe a little bit harder. Doesn't have to be some crazy way of tracking it, like you have to hold your heart rate up to the noon sun and something like that. Doesn't have to be some crazy way to track it. And do as close to a total body light resistance training session twice a week. Now, when I dumb it down to, well, listen, so I understand you're afraid to exercise during this, but are you going to do any laundry during this time? And the patient's like, well, yeah, like I got to keep up with that stuff, of course. And it's like, okay, well, where's your washer? Oh, it's downstairs. Oh, so you'll have to carry a load of laundry up the stairs. Well, that's going to be harder than anything that we're going to do. So again, I hope that that can kind of give an example as to what movement and exercise can be versus like what people's perception of it can be. So if I were to tell like an everyday person walking on the street, hey, what's your idea of exercise? They would probably tell me some like Jane Fonda um, uh, group exercise, like sweatband across the top, tall socks. And it's like, hey, if that's your thing, more power to you, no problem with it at all. But exercise can be so many different things and it can be so simple too. The same thing goes with movement. Um, so before I spend too much time on this, before I spend too much time painting the picture of that, um, I want to kind of give another example here. Um, so I read a while ago there was there was a study. I forget who did it, but there was a study done on bed rest. Um, and I'm going to give two examples here that are kind of hospital type examples. But there was a study on bed rest, and basically what they did was they had apparently healthy individuals be on bed rest for 1 month. A lot of hospitals used to do things like that. As far as I know, they're kind of moving away from that, and they're making sure that their people are walking and stuff like that during their extended hospital stays. Which like thank God. um, because you literally avoid so much problems just by getting some circulation in there. But anyway, um, so they monitored these people's muscle mass and their overall body mass during their bed rest period, and they were apparently healthy individuals. Um, at the end of 1 month, they discovered that those people had aged at about twice the normal rate, and they deconditioned. Um, I think the average, like their fitness scores after the bed rest was like considered average for somebody 30 years older than them, and I think that was the average result. They also lost about half of their body's muscle mass. Now that sounds like some type of like bodybuilder meathead type of thing, like, oh, I don't want to lose my guns type of thing. But unfortunately, in the healthcare world, something that I'm well aware of is that a condition called sarcopenia is one of the highestly correlated conditions with all-cause mortality. So, what sarcopenia is, I'm not sure if anybody's heard of that. It's essentially just rapid muscle wasting. So, like, basically, um, if I pray to God that nobody on here has experienced something like this, or nobody listening has experienced something like this. But for some people, when they're newly diagnosed with a cancer, they may have went through like a 6 month period or maybe a 8 to 10 month period or so where they were just shedding weight like crazy. They were super fatigued, and they by the time they're diagnosed, they're like, man, I don't know what happened. I lost like 60 pounds. Like, what happened? Something like that would probably be considered sarcopenia. The person has lost so much muscle mass so rapidly. And unfortunately, that, like I said, has a very high correlation with mortality. Regardless of if we're talking about a cancer population, cardiovascular population, elderly adults, whatever, that's just how it is. So it's like, if you can avoid doing that stuff, and if you can preserve the muscle mass that your body has, not saying we all have to go out there and be like Arnie and start, clanging and banging, throwing around the dumbbells like crazy or something. But if we can just do a little bit, those guidelines of 30 minutes of aerobic 3 times a week and 2 total body sessions twice a week, of light to moderate resistance training, as somebody ages, they can drastically change the trajectory that their body's physical state would be in should something terrible happen, like they get diagnosed with a chronic illness. Anybody have any questions for me about that concept or that clarification there? Anything along those lines? Okay, so I hope that this isn't coming across as morbid or something like that. But again, I just feel that it's shocking how bastardized the idea of exercise and movement is in today's American culture. So so essentially what I want to encourage everybody here to do is the next time somebody tells you to exercise, don't look at them as if they're some Looney Tune character telling you like, hey, you need to go pump some iron. I want to pump you up type of thing. Look at them as they're a human and they're being like, hey, let's go do human stuff. Like, let's not sit around on a couch for 8 hours. It's not very human at all. It's more like a slug. Like, let's go, get off your panties, folks. um, so I hope that it's kind of coming across in that sense as it's not new to not exercise, even though like the field of exercise is new. We were doing it for thousands of years. We just didn't call it exercise. It's not new um, for humans to exercise at all ages. It's new for us not to, and it's new for us not to move on a daily basis. So if you can think of maybe, I don't know, barring some attenuating circumstances, of course, if you can think of like a 1 week period of time throughout your life, maybe where you're like, yeah, I really did like nothing that whole week. I know for me, the week that I finished massage therapy school, it was 3 nights a week for about 10 months. Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday. When I finished massage therapy school, I was tired. And I took like I think I took like a week and a half off from going to the gym. And looking back now, I'm like, well, yeah, maybe give my hands a break, but why didn't I just go for a walk? Like, why didn't I ride the recumbent bike or ride the rowing machine or something like that? Like, I didn't have to go to the gym and lift heavy in order to exercise. And I know that. I majored in this stuff. So if you can think back on a 1 week period of time where and 1 week, 2 months, whatever it may be for you, barring some emergency circumstance like you had a broken leg or something like that, what stopped you from being human and moving? Like, what was it that stopped you? I think for a lot of people, they can consider things like, oh, well, I can still go get my groceries and carry them into the house, carry them up the stairs. I can still do that. So why exercise? I can still do that. So yeah, I'm physically active. I can still garden. So I'm physically active. Um, but the point is, we're meant to adapt and we're meant to move. So if you're not challenging the system isn't going to grow. Anybody have any questions for me about this stuff? Again, I don't know if this is coming across as like an off the wall perspective or something like that. I just think a lot of people in our society today just have this idea that like, oh, exercise is only for you crazy gym people. You know what I mean? And it shouldn't be that way. It really shouldn't be that way.
Ben, I think I'm gonna stop the recording and then we can ask questions.